Naomi Fletcher trusted Victor Lang. She admired his work, saw him as a mentor, and believed she was walking into a creative opportunity. But in just 4 hours, that trust turned into terror, and what was meant to be an art project became one of the most chilling crimes Elmsbrook had ever seen. The morning mist hung low over the sleepy town of Elmsbrook when the discovery was made. It was just after 6:30 a.m. on a Monday when a local jogger, cutting through the wooded trails of East Ridge Park, spotted something unusual. At first glance it looked like nothing more than a pile of fallen branches and wet leaves, but something about the shape made him stop. As he approached, the air seemed to thicken, the quiet of the forest amplifying every step. When he brushed away the top layer of sticks, what he uncovered would haunt him forever. Underneath the tangled debris was the body of a young woman, partially clothed, her limbs bent at unnatural angles. Her hands were tied behind her back with what looked like a belt, and there were deep purple bruises along her neck and jawline. One of her shoes was missing, and her skin was cold to the touch. The jogger stumbled backward, reaching for his phone with shaking hands. Within minutes, police cordoned off the area. What began as a typical morning quickly spiraled into a scene of horror. It didn't take long to identify the victim. Naomi Fletcher, 24 years old, had been reported missing just hours earlier by her roommate. She was a quiet, introverted art student at the local university, known for her detailed oil paintings and her habit of keeping to herself. She had grown up in Elmsbrook, a town where people left their doors unlocked and everyone knew everyone by name. News of her death spread fast, and the town's sense of safety shattered in an instant. The medical examiner's report would confirm what many feared, but few were prepared to hear. Naomi had not died quickly. Her time of death was estimated to be around 1 a.m., and the bruising patterns on her body suggested prolonged abuse, at least 4 hours of it. The marks on her wrists indicated she had struggled hard against her restraints. There were ligature wounds on her ankles and evidence of blunt force trauma to her ribs. It was clear, whoever had done this hadn't just wanted to kill her. They wanted her to suffer. But perhaps most disturbing was the location. The area where Naomi was found was deep within the forest, far from any walking path or visible landmarks. Someone had gone to great effort to hide her body, covering it with branches and leaves as if trying to erase any trace. Yet some items nearby didn't make sense. A smashed phone, still clinging to a bit of battery life, was found 20 feet away. Police would later determine it was Naomi's. Her wallet was missing, but her ID had been left behind, tucked into her back pocket. The early hours of the investigation yielded more questions than answers. Why had Naomi gone into the woods that night? Who had she trusted enough to follow there? And how could someone carry out such a calculated act of cruelty without anyone noticing? Elmsbrook had seen its share of small-town drama, but nothing like this. The forest had always been a place of calm for locals, a shortcut for joggers, a quiet space for dog walkers. Now it was marked as something else entirely, a crime scene soaked in silence and fear. Naomi Fletcher had left her apartment at approximately 7:45 p.m. on a Sunday evening. She told her roommate she was heading to a birthday party being held at a local bar downtown, just a 10-minute drive from their place. She had even dressed for the occasion. Jeans, a light jacket, and a pair of tan ankle boots she only wore on special nights out. But somewhere between locking the apartment door and the time her body was found in the woods, everything went terribly wrong. What happened during those missing hours would become the focus of a complex and chilling investigation. Her phone activity provided the first real lead. At 8:23 p.m., Naomi requested a ride through a popular rideshare app. The request was confirmed, and a car was dispatched to her location. But the driver, when later interviewed by police, said he waited outside the apartment building for several minutes and saw no sign of her. Eventually, he cancelled the ride and drove away. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's security camera confirmed that the car did, in fact, arrive and leave without a passenger. Investigators were puzzled. Naomi had clearly ordered the ride, yet she never entered the vehicle. So where had she gone? Her phone continued to send signals for about another 40 minutes. Between 8:30 and 9:10 p.m., it pinged off 3 different towers, tracing a strange path that led away from her apartment and toward the edge of Elmsbrook Forest. This area was not on the way to the bar. It wasn't near any houses, shops, or public gathering places. It was just trees and dirt paths. There was no indication as to how she traveled there. No one had seen her walking, and no other rideshare records were found. Then, at 9:11 p.m., her phone abruptly shut off. Whether it was powered down manually or destroyed was unclear. The next clue was found the following morning during a search of the trailhead near the forest's edge. A charm bracelet, silver, delicate, and unlike anything Naomi usually wore, was lying near a patch of disturbed earth. It didn't match the description of any jewelry she owned. When examined more closely, it was discovered to have faint traces of blood on one of the clasps. Police believed it may have been torn off in a struggle. The area where it was found was about a mile from the cabin where Naomi's body would later be found, suggesting she may have attempted to escape or was dragged through that part of the forest. Her roommate and friends were brought in for questioning. None of them had received any messages from Naomi after she left. There were no texts, no social media posts, nothing. It was as though she had simply vanished into the night. The birthday party she had planned to attend went on, without her, with friends initially assuming she had changed her mind or was feeling unwell. No one suspected that Naomi had already disappeared by the time they started cutting the cake. The timeline between 8:23 and 9:11 p.m. became the window investigators focused on. Somewhere in those 48 minutes, Naomi had gone from a young woman on her way to a party to the victim of a premeditated abduction. And although no witnesses had seen a struggle and no security footage had captured her leaving, someone had managed to intercept her without raising a single alarm. The search for answers led investigators deeper into the surrounding forest, where dense trees and overgrown trails made the terrain nearly impossible to navigate. Locals who hunted or hiked in the area mentioned an old cabin that had long been abandoned, hidden just beyond a shallow creek and covered in moss. Few people ever ventured that far in. The structure had once served as a hunting outpost decades earlier, but now it stood as a forgotten skeleton of wood and rusting nails. When officers reached the site, what they found inside would shift the case from disturbing to horrifying. The front door was slightly ajar, its hinges barely holding. Inside, the cabin was dark, cold, and filled with the scent of decay. Dust clung to every surface, and animal droppings littered the floor. But amidst the debris were fresh signs of human activity: ropes nailed into the wooden beams, a stained mattress on the floor, and what looked like dried blood in the corner. On a rusted table sat a digital camera, its lens cracked but intact. Officers also found a lantern, recently used, and empty food wrappers that suggested someone had stayed there for hours, possibly even overnight. Forensics confirmed the blood in the cabin matched Naomi's. Several items were sent for DNA testing, including the ropes and mattress fibers, but the most chilling discovery came from the memory card inside the camera. Investigators expected to find photos of the forest or wildlife, but instead uncovered a sequence of images that documented Naomi's final hours. The photos were taken with a deliberate, almost clinical eye. Some showed her sitting on the floor, her hands bound and her face bruised. Others were taken from odd angles, through a cracked mirror, from above the mattress, or partially obscured by shadows. Each image was time-stamped, marking the slow passage of time between her capture and her death. The timestamps painted a haunting picture. The first image had been taken at 9:32 p.m., just 20 minutes after Naomi's phone went dead. The last one, time-stamped at 1:06 a.m., showed her motionless on the mattress, her face turned away from the lens. There were no visible injuries in the final photo, but forensic experts later confirmed she had likely gone into cardiac arrest due to stress, blunt force trauma, and prolonged fear. She had died there, alone, in the middle of the night. Documented, minute by minute through a stranger's lens. One image, however, offered a new and unexpected clue. In the reflection of the cracked mirror, a blurred figure could be seen. It was difficult to make out, but the silhouette of a tall man with dark clothing and a camera strap around his neck stood just outside the frame. He had likely not noticed the reflection when taking the photo. Investigators enhanced the image and began cross-referencing it with any known individuals connected to Naomi, especially those involved in photography. It was this mistake, the reflection in the mirror, that would eventually unravel everything. While Naomi's final moments were captured in harrowing detail, her killer had also unknowingly captured a piece of himself, and with that, the case shifted from a tragic mystery to a manhunt, with one name slowly rising to the top of the suspect list. The distorted reflection in the cracked mirror was grainy, but distinct enough for digital forensics to extract valuable features. The man in the photo was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore a dark hoodie with a faded logo on the back. What stood out most was the camera strap hanging from his neck, a thick, custom strap with a unique pattern. Investigators sent the image to photography forums and local camera shops in hopes someone would recognize the equipment. It worked. A camera technician in Elmsbrook recognized the strap immediately. It belonged to Victor Lang, a 41-year-old freelance photographer who had visited the shop multiple times over the years. Victor wasn't a stranger to the world of art. A decade earlier, he had been a minor figure in the local creative community, known for his moody, experimental photography and reclusive lifestyle. He had taught a few workshops at the local university, including one Naomi Fletcher had attended during her second year. At the time, Victor had praised Naomi's natural talent and even collaborated with her on a short photography project involving urban decay. After that semester, their contact reportedly ended, or so everyone believed. Detectives pulled Victor's records and discovered he lived alone in a house on the outskirts of town, just 15 minutes from the forest. A review of his online presence showed troubling patterns. His recent portfolio included eerily staged photographs, many featuring female figures in abandoned places, bound, masked, or blurred in ways that resembled the images found in the cabin. More unsettling still were his geotags. Several images were marked in areas overlapping with the forest trails surrounding Elmsbrook, including within a mile of where Naomi was found. When detectives visited Victor's house, he was calm and cooperative. He claimed he hadn't seen Naomi in years and barely remembered her, but his composure faltered when officers asked to search his property. In a locked drawer inside his office, they found a small black sketchbook. Inside were pages filled with Naomi's artwork, drawings she had done years earlier, some torn, others stained. Her signature was on the final page. He offered no explanation for how it got there. Further searching uncovered more evidence, clothing matching the reflection in the photo, a second memory card hidden beneath a loose floorboard, and a detailed hand-drawn map of the forest with the cabin clearly marked. It became impossible for Victor to maintain the illusion of distance. The photographic evidence, the connection to Naomi, and the physical items found in his home painted a damning picture. He was arrested that evening on suspicion of kidnapping and murder. During interrogation, Victor remained mostly silent, but when presented with the photo of his reflection, his expression changed. His silence was replaced with a vague admission. He referred to the events as a project gone too far and claimed it was never meant to end in death. This partial confession, paired with the overwhelming evidence, led to formal charges being filed within 48 hours. The town of Elmsbrook was left in shock. Victor Lang had been someone many had trusted, a teacher, an artist, a member of the community. Now he was revealed to be a predator hiding behind a camera lens, capturing his cruelty under the guise of creativity. Naomi's story had begun with an invitation and ended in horror. But finally, the person behind her pain had a name and a face. The trial of Victor Lang began 6 months after his arrest, and the courtroom was packed on the first day. Journalists, students, artists, and heartbroken townspeople filled every seat. Naomi Fletcher's family sat in the front row, silent but visibly shattered. What the prosecution laid out during those tense weeks would expose a level of darkness no one in Elmsbrook had anticipated. Victor's project, as he called it, had not been a spontaneous crime. It was calculated, planned, and the 4 hours Naomi suffered under his control were far more sinister than anyone had first believed. According to forensic experts and digital analysis of the photos, Victor had prepared the cabin days before the attack. He had brought in supplies, Ropes, a camera, lighting equipment, even a camping stove. The scene had been staged for what he called a raw emotional study. To the court, it was evidence of premeditated cruelty. He had selected Naomi because he knew her, knew she trusted him, and knew from their prior artistic relationship how to lure her without causing suspicion. A message recovered from a deleted phone account revealed he had contacted her the day before she vanished, posing as a gallery curator offering a private shoot for an upcoming exhibit. Naomi believed it. She left her apartment, dressed modestly, and never told anyone about the offer. Victor picked her up in an unregistered vehicle he had borrowed using a false name. He took her to the cabin under the pretense of preparing for a creative collaboration. But as soon as they arrived, the tone shifted. She was restrained, her phone taken, her cries lost in the thickness of the forest, and for the next 4 hours she endured a series of staged photographs, painful physical manipulation, and moments of psychological torment. He filmed parts of it, not for money, not for attention, but for control. The defense tried to argue that Victor was mentally unstable, detached from reality, and believed he was creating a provocative piece of performance art. But the jury didn't see an artist. They saw a predator, someone who used his knowledge of aesthetics and emotion to orchestrate pain and mask it in creativity. The memory card recovered from his home showed that Naomi was not his first subject. There were other women, alive but clearly uncomfortable in his earlier photos. None had reported him, perhaps fearing judgment or unsure of what had happened. Naomi had simply been the one who didn't make it out. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, kidnapping, unlawful restraint, and the production of non-consensual material. Victor Lang was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. As he was led away in handcuffs, he showed no remorse, no words. Just a blank stare that unsettled everyone in the room. Elmsbrook will never forget Naomi Fletcher. Her memorial stands at the edge of East Ridge Park, not far from where she was found. A sculpture, one of her own designs, is now installed there, a tribute to her talent and her memory. The forest, once a quiet escape, now carries her name and her story. 4 hours in the dark became a lifetime of loss, but justice finally brought a sliver of light.